Hello everyone, so this is Cosette and I'll be going over my coloring process today. Here at the beginning section, I'm just putting some screens about 4 layer types that I use in my video. Normal for my initial sketch. Multiply is what I use for my line art, so it's kind of see-through and lets colors underneath to shine through. I also use multiply for my shading as well. Screen I use for highlighting edges of my line art where they overlap other sections in the picture. And overlay I use it to add like a glowing effect with an airbrush. So now we're going to head into the start of my drawing, and I'll do a really rough sketch on one layer, normal type, and then second layer I'll do my refined sketch. Initially the sketch is on a normal type of layer, but later I'll switch that to a multiply, but I'll show you that later. So after I've done my initial sketch, I will want to fill in the space inside the line art, but since it's just a sketch, I most likely skip some spots, and you can see when I select around the line art, some of the blue spills into the line art, so that tells me that there's a gap in the lines. So I just have to go back to the line art and draw in the little missing parts. Now that I've got the inside selected and I filled it in, I'm going to manually fix any little spots that I've missed in the selection. So I have my peachy color filled in on its own layer just underneath that sketch, and I have clicked on the side, preserve opacity, and what that does is it allows me to color outside of that space without it actually spilling outside of the space. So basically you can only color where you've already colored. Now I like to color the skin first since it's usually the biggest area in the drawing, and I will use at least 2 darker shades than the base color of the skin, and I usually choose a color that is closer to the bottom right, and I will turn the color wheel closer to red so it's a bit warmer and a bit darker. So with the first shade I will do like light shadows on the skin, and then the second darker shade I'll use it to define some smaller areas like the eyelids and the lips maybe. Okay, now I'm coloring the base color of the eye, and that is with a off-white color, and I'll do that on the same layer as the skin, and then I'll also add a drop shadow on the whites of the eye just to make it so it's not all plain and flat. Then I tend to do my coloring of the iris on its own layer, so I've made a new layer above the skin and I filled it with a base color, and then now I'm just adding darker shades to kind of give the eyes a little bit of depth. And everybody has their own style of coloring their eyes, so yeah, this is like where you can be creative and do your own kind of thing. Yeah, just keep going until you're happy with how the eyes look. You can also do your highlights on the same layer as where you've colored the eyes, or if you prefer to do them on separate layers, totally go for it. Now I'm going to color in the hair, and I do the hair base color on the same layer as the skin. So generally you're going to see me work on the same layer for everything, but if you prefer to have them separated, then that by all means go for it. I would just suggest you to use a clipping group if you're going to do separate layers. So the skin color will be the base, and then any additional layers above the skin, you can clip it to the skin layer, and that way you can keep coloring with a big brush and it won't go outside of the lines. So after I've got the base color of the hair done, I will add a highlight color, and in this drawing I'm thinking of doing a blue sky background, so that's why I've added a bluish tone for the highlight. And then I grab the hair color again, and with a soft brush I will brush in towards the highlight, kind of making V shapes, and that makes a zigzag pattern for the highlight. You can have fun with it. You could do smooth highlights where the edges are completely clean, or you could do kind of rough ones, or you could use maybe a rough brush and just brush on the highlight very lightly. You can make lots of different looks for that. Generally, I'll try to keep the highlight in general shape, like a round shape, so it kind of shows how round the head is. You can, for right here, you can see that I've used that highlight color to color the parts of the hair that's generally going to be in shadow. It's a little bit counterintuitive, but it looks nice. I'm not really great at color and shadows, so I just kind of do what feels good. And then next I will color the line art. So I've gone back to the line layer, which is that top layer you see there, and I've clicked preserve opacity, and then now I'm using a brush to pick out the color that's around the line art. Like the iris is green, so I've used the green color to color that line there, and I'm going to do that for the rest of the picture. What that does is it kind of softens how the lines look. I've also changed the line to a multiply layer, and that way the color that's underneath the lines will also shine through, and that also helps to colorize them. For the eyeline art, I like to darken the top and bottom eyelash lines and then add a reddish color with an airbrush to soften the outside edge of the eyelashes. Next, you'll see that I've combined all my layers together. The only thing that's left out is the initial sketch, which is underneath, but really you could delete it right now. I'm also blurring the edge of the irises just to give the eyes a bit of a softer look. So now I've made a new folder, but then I deleted it, so I guess I didn't need it. I've made a overlay layer with an airbrush. I'm going to brush a bit of a orangey color on the outside of the iris, and I just do that because I like how it warms up the green color with the rest of the picture, and I find having more color going on in the eye section makes it a bit more interesting. And next I've made a multiply layer and also clipped it down, and I'm gonna do the initial shading really quick here, thinking about how the light is coming from above and in front of the character. And after you've done your shading, you can blur the edges so they're not quite so harsh looking. Makes the features of the character look a bit softer, rounder if you soften the edges. And then I lock the colors again, and I've changed the general shading color to a blue color. And now I'm using an airbrush to warm up the edge of the shadows. The edge being the area that's closer to the light. So center of the face, and then the further away the shadow is from the light, the more blue it will appear. And this way the shadow doesn't look quite so unnatural, I think. And if you ever need to go back and erase something, make sure you've turned off the preserve opacity, because if it's still on and you delete it, basically what's happening is it's going to leave behind a white space where the color used to be. So depending on the layer type, it might not make an effect, but in general, it's better to make sure that preserve opacity is turned off when you do erasing. Okay, so next I am using a screen layer on top, and I am highlighting some stuff like the eyes and the edge of the nose, also around the face and where the hair strands overlap in front. It kind of adds a bit of depth because my coloring is not really defined. It's kind of flat by itself. And then with overlay, I'm using an airbrush and just brushing on an orangey color in the center of the face and in front of the chest area, just to kind of warm up all the colors and make them a bit more homogeneous together. You can definitely play around with that depending on what the lighting scheme is in your drawing. Maybe you have a blue light and you want kind of a bluish glow on your character. And yeah, here, so because I'm thinking of doing that sky background, I'm adding a bit of blue to the edge of the character, like that's further away from the center. And now I'm just quickly doing a background. It's really messy. Yeah, you could do it on one layer, you could do it on multiples. Okay, so now I've added a multiply layer on top of the character, directly on top of the character, clipped it to it, and I've basically added kind of a bluish color and then erased the middle with an airbrush, and that just adds more of that cool outside feel. And then I'm adding a bit more highlighting to separate the character from the background. Now with highlighting, I usually pick the color that's around the highlight area, so you know at the bottom of the hair it's like an orangey background, so I've used that orange color. As I move up in the picture, it gets gradually more blue, so I've grabbed some of that blue sky background for my highlight color, and that just makes it so it doesn't look so harsh, especially if I had an opposite color as the highlight, like an orange color going into a blue section. And then now I'm just finishing it up. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me know if you have any questions. This is a summary screen, so you can pause it and read some explanations there. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.